Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my PLN reflection. This is another space where I'll be talking about what went right and what went wrong with my PLN. And I have to admit that I'm a little disappointed with the events that occurred during my PLN. And it has a lot to do with the goals that I set out and how, in the day and age in which we live, they weren't realistic goals, or apparently they aren't realistic goals for a young academic to pursue. Um, the first of my goals was to increase my media presence on Twitter, Reddit, and Facebook, and discuss topics that are relevant to multicultural or bilingual education. That goal I did reach. I did become a presence on more on Facebook and Reddit. Twitter, I tried to link to my Twitter account to my Facebook and vice versa, but it just Twitter became more of a space for me to look for resources rather than post them since I thought there was going to be a lot more interaction there, but it really died out. The second point was to follow and interact with top researchers in the field of multicultural education, ELL, ESL, TESOL education, and related fields. And this is where my first real big problem came out. And it's the fact that most of these top researchers and most of these people do not interact on a daily basis with technology. They usually use these social media platforms, or they usually use their platforms as a marketing tool to expose them to where they're really going to be, to their locations, towards their tour dates. Basically becomes a tool to just market what they're going to do for the next week. And I thought that it was very disappointing that they wouldn't really interact that much with people from the outside, with teachers from the outside, with individuals that just tagged them on a day that was really nothing relevant was going on. They wouldn't be able to respond or to interact, or even days later, especially to specific questions that they're always talking about. Like, for example, what is culture? What is it multicultural education to them? How is it represented? And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that we're living in a day and age where it's more important to sell than to give the message. So, for example, these people are very influential people, and they're always trying to sell their message. They're either trying to sell you a book, they're trying to sell you a solution program, but there's really no interaction with the teacher. There's really no direct question and answer unless they provide the space for question and answer. So again, it's more sellable than anything else. I mean, I relate to a lot of these things with my other life in sport broadcasting or sports podcasting, and those Q&As are usually done by athletes whenever something major happens, and the same thing happens to educators that have a social media presence. They're just doing it after the event. They're not doing it before. They're not establishing a relationship with their community. They're really just there, and they're not really looking to create a community. Which leads me to the third point, and that's where my PLN I think thrived, and I kept going with it because of my third point, which was to expand the PLN by identifying and following teachers, junior faculty, junior researchers that are rising in the fields. And this is where everything came together. This is where I found out that instead of following these superstars in the field of academia, these people that have already made it, what's important is to look for those that are going through the same struggles that you are. And the main focus of my PLN was on Reddit. It evolved to where Reddit became this outlet where many teachers would interact, where many educators would interact, and since it's from a position of anonymity, we really didn't focus on who was saying it, but really focused on the advice. So there wasn't really the importance of if I'm talking to Pedro Noguera or to Sonia Nieto. It's just the importance of giving good advice and helping each other out. And I think that even though I cannot name personally or concretely who these individuals are, by their usernames, I can establish that I have a PLN community on Reddit that I am constantly interacting, that I'm constantly looking at, that I'm constantly asking for advice, but also giving advice. Because these are educators that are across the entire gamma, across the entire growing process of being a teacher and the entire growing process of being an educator. So I guess that after much thought and much reflection, my PLN, instead of looking up towards these professors, towards these educators that have already become somebody in the world, I thought about looking down and actually helping those that are struggling, that are having problems. And that's where my entire focus shifted. And it shifted not only for the reasons that I just stated, but it also shifted because I felt that neglect in academia. And at least not in ISU. The professors in ISU have always been helpful, but I come from a very cutthroat university back home where ranking was important, where you were in the faculty was important, and it was palpable. And I can't just help but say that I felt the same way when I interacted with these higher ups. And if they don't recognize your name, they don't recognize who you are, they're really not going to interact with you. Again, going back to sports, it happens all the time. Broadcasters are not going to interact with you unless you're a very famous person. And if they do, it's during a Q&A session that they provided. So I felt that there was really a neglect of the community, and that's a big issue that academia needs to understand and acknowledge and face dead on. And it's that as educators, as part of the academic world, we're very isolated and we don't support communities at all. We don't support working with other faculty unless it provides a paper, unless it provides something where I can benefit, or unless it provides something that's palpable for my tenure, for my ranking, for something that is, I mean, important, but at the same time, really material. Instead of helping the next generation of teachers, instead of helping the next generation of educators, instead of focusing on the problems that we have right now, we have a teacher shortage, and ignoring the people that are trying to make a difference or not helping them when you can is really not going to solve it. We have a problem where educators are not really having resources, and when they ask out for these academics to help, when they ask out for a quick question to answer, when they ask out on materials that they can use, they are either ignored or sent to a really expensive book or sent to the way of buying your way out. That's how Teachers Pay Teachers really came to existence. Teachers having questions and then conglomerating a lot of activities and assessments that can just be bought and copy and pasted into your curriculum. And I feel that that shouldn't be the way. I feel that these educators should help these teachers and help us as young educators reach out and grow and answer at least our basic questions. And if anything, if I learned anything from this PLN, it's the fact that we need to help those that are below us and those that are at our same level. We need to group up and we need to form community. Many of the problems that are happening right now in education that I teach in Introduction to Cross-Cultural and Multicultural Education is that we are divided as a community. We are divided as individuals. We are boxed up between our race, our gender preference, our social economic levels, and we do not focus on what makes us normal Illinois, what makes us Bloomington, Illinois, what makes us Illinois. We're always too divided and too preoccupied in ourselves. And as teachers, it always happens. We're always preoccupied on how do I reach the next step in the curriculum? How am I hitting all the standards? And there's really no support towards what are we really teaching these children? Are we really providing them with a holistic experience where they're growing physically, where they're growing emotionally, where they're growing psychologically? We really are just ignoring the focus of education, which is community building and society building. And I think that my PLN is going to evolve, or at least it's going to keep evolving within Reddit, which is this only safe space or the only space that I have found where educators help each other in every sense of the word, where there's no ignoring a problem, there's no ignoring a question, there's no ignoring a ask for resources and sending them towards a paywall. There's a genuine focus on helping educators become better and helping educators reach their full potential within their classroom and with their students. So my reflection for the PLN is that, first of all, it's a great activity. I'm definitely incorporating this activity into my curriculum and into the courses that I teach in the future. And second of all, that it made me reflect a lot on the fact that we as educators are always asking or are always asked to work within the community to become these community builders, these community changers, yet our own communities just turn their back on us and don't provide the resources and don't provide the help, or our leaders don't provide the help that we think or that I think we should have, especially young faculty or young educators going up the ranks or having questions or just feeling lost and thinking that one educator could definitely help us more than sitting back and waiting until somebody tells us what we did wrong. On a side note, the only person that this is really interesting. I spent 3 days asking people on Twitter, what was their definition of culture, and Dr. Anna Smith was one of the only people that answered. Her and then her group of friends, where she tagged me along on a Twitter post. So if it wasn't for Dr. Smith, those 3 days would have been completely thrown away. So there is hope. There is hope that educators and professors do help, but for the majority of the people that I started following, that I asked the question, I just had that silence.